Navoni member event with our special guest, Christine Berry. Many of you may know Christine as Christine Hodson from if you were ever in the RDH One Roof, Under One Roof event, or if you ever read any of her articles in the past. But Christine, she is an innovative and results-driven leader with multifaceted expertise in operations, leadership, development, and clinical. She has established capabilities in revenue growth, performance improvement, and clinical initiatives. Christine creates growth-based strategies to address and leverage the challenging market trends to secure long-term profitability. Christine has spoke at many of the biggest dental meetings in the country. She's got an infectious personality. I just love her. You are going to love her as well. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Christine Berry as our guest speaker for today. Christine, take it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dana. I'm so excited to be here. It's such a blast collaborating in such a deep way with friends that you've known for a long time in this industry. So I'm really honored to be here in front of your audience. And congratulations on your recent excitement with your business and the merging. I know that's something that you've been really focusing on. So congratulations with that. That's really exciting for your audience.
Thank you so much.
So hello, go ahead. So hello, everyone. I am so excited to be here with you. I have some incredibly brand new material that I'm going to be going over with you today. And it's talking about communication styles, it's talking about leadership styles, and it's all in the realm of case acceptance and the energies around case presentation. So today's webinar, you're going to be learning how the 4 steps to patient enrollment or case acceptance, and you will hear me go back and forth between patient enrollment, maybe client enrollment, and case presentation. So those words I use interchangeably. And I'm going to teach you my enrollment formula right here on the webinar. So I'm just going to share everything with you, put it all out there. What I'm going to share is going to help you stop being in a place where you may resist feeling that you're selling, or you may resist feeling that you are dialing for dollars when you're calling up your patients, right? And trying to fill the doctor's schedule or fill the hygiene schedule. So I have initially right off the bat, because I want to get you guys engaged and hear from you, and please ask questions and mention things in the chat so we can have an interactive time together. But Dana, there was a question that I have, the number 1 dealing with selling. Do you mind putting that up on the screen for us? Oh, I think that's me.
You got it? Can you see it? Oh. Let's see, is the poll working?
I believe the audience can see it, yes.
Okay, perfect.
Can someone type something in saying that you can see that poll question?
Let's see, launch. Yes. 100% say, no, I don't like it. Yeah, 100% of the audience.
I love that. I absolutely love it. And I have no doubt. So I do hope that as we dive into the content today, it's going to help you stop trying to convince or feel that you have to convince your patients to say yes to treatment, right? If you find that that's something that you're doing. And hopefully you can kind of look at a little bit more and invite you to rethink of the word selling. And I like to offer for my clients, and I'm working with professionals, that I change the word selling to service, right? So it's going to be a little bit about replacing that mindset around that S-E-L-L word. And we're also going to be looking at really ways to embrace the mindset so you can start to increase your case acceptance. And you can increase your case acceptance anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000 a day or a week, depending on how often you want to introduce this type of formula and what your patient population is. So I'm going to be sharing with you my special remedy also for clients or patients who may tell you that they can't afford it or insurance won't cover that. So we're going to be touching base on that a little bit towards the end. I'm not sure if anyone else has ever heard that. Just kind of show your hands or make a comment if you've had ever heard that from any of your patients. So I hope you can see these slides. I hope you can hear my voice if that's okay, because I'm going to be flipping through these slides. For those of you who are like me and you're kind of visual learners, this really will help you to retain that information more powerfully, anywhere from like 10 and 20%. Now, if you're on the phone today, it's okay, because as you replay this recording or as you look at these slides, and I can even send those slides over to Dana at the end, you can take a look at the formulas and the content that's on there when you get a chance later on. So the two main takeaways that I really kind of want to play around with you today is that the art of communication is really balancing the masculine and feminine styles that we all have. And the second takeaway is that I really would like you to let go of any resistance that you may have in your enrollment conversations or your case presentation conversations. And case presentation, it's a skill whether you're in the hygiene room with existing patients or with new patients, or even calling on the phone. And I really been doing a lot more work with participants and providers around the reactivation system. So it can really run the gamut as far as what this type of skills and this communication. So case presentation in general is really a feminine skill. And when I say that, let me clarify. It's not just for women, right? It's not just a female skill. I'm speaking to men and women. And I'm speaking to men who really want to embrace their feminine side, right? As a way to help enroll patients, as a way to help to have that communication, as a way to have a leadership style. Because many of us, if you've grown up in dentistry for any longer than 5 years, right? So I've been in dentistry for over 30 years, and a lot of times that we were taught models or systems that you wanted to go bigger, faster, better, right? And being sold that you need to have like 105,000 patients each month in order to be successful, right? So let me just ask you real quick, as I'm going into new patients and patients of record, I have one more poll question that's around case acceptance rate. And I'm curious right now, just kind of off the top of your head, not looking or not going into your Dentrix systems, but what is your case acceptance rate for your new patient?
Okay, I launched the poll. So let's see what our collecting responses. All right. Let's see. So far, we have 20% of our audience has voted. So far, the biggest response is the 30 to 49%. All right. So if everybody can take a second and answer the poll, we can see, okay, so we've got a 50-50 tie between 30 to 49% case acceptance and 50 to 69% case acceptance so far. All right, I'll close the poll down. All right. So it looks like our end result was a 50-50 tie, Christine, between 30 to 49% case acceptance and 50 to 69% case acceptance.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. And I wanted to, so let's tease that out a little bit. So it's purposeful why I called out new patients, because with best practices and when you're developing a system, as I'm sure many of you know, that their case acceptance rate or your case acceptance rate should be different, or most likely it's going to be different for patients of record and new patients. So what we're looking at the statistics as far as with what you kind of the goal at across the industry, ideally what we can target or looking to target is about an 80% case acceptance rate for new patients. So that's probably why many of you are on this call to pick up some strategies and tools with uplifting that. Now, for patients of record, depending on who you listen to or what research you're looking at, patients of record should hover around about a 90% rate as far as case acceptance. And so why is that the difference? Because as we move forward into this conversation, you'll probably realize, if you don't already, if you have that rapport already built with someone, if you already have built that connection, the logic is they're more likely to trust you than they move forward in saying yes to the treatment that they deserve, right, and the services that you're offering. Versus for a new patient, it may take some time to go ahead and build up that rapport and that trust. Now, having said that, what's also unique, and I'm just going to kind of a point of clarification, when you try on, when you start to play around with some new verbal skills, with some new systems within your practice, and these systems are really a fit and they're working, what I have found in the trend in some practices that they actually have better case acceptance rates with new patients versus patients of record, because you're showing up differently to those new patients versus patients that you may have treated for 3 or 5 years. That makes sense, right? So there is research around this type of work as far as with case acceptance, and specifically for the title today of the program, there is research around the profitability. There's research around return on investment that shows that the values of collaboration and unity and generosity, right, more traditional female values are the energies of the new economy, is where globally, not just in our world, not just in the oral health industry, but globally. So this type of information comes outside dentistry that I'm bringing into dentistry so we can benefit from it. So for both men and women, and again, it's not about the sex, it's trying to unify this masculine and feminine leadership styles that we all have within us. And there's also some work, preliminary work around this for those of you who are interested, because there's tons of science around this. And so I want to let everyone know that I did have a master's degree in executive coaching. So this is very much a science-based type of program. So 2 areas, if you're interested to further up with, the most popular, the most recent, I should say, or current, would be the Athena Doctrine. So you can Google that and find it on Amazon. And more historical perspective, depending on what your age bracket is Ken Blanchard, right? So Ken Blanchard was a management guru dealing with situational leadership. So this type of work is built on his work back in the 70s and 80s around situational leadership. So the first step in the process of understanding our communication energies, right, and our communication styles, and I will touch base with and go back and forth with communication and leadership, because your communication style, how you communicate to others, is a factor in who you are as a leader and how you show up as a leader. So I will be kind of using those terminologies as well. So understanding that communication energy is to become conscious of what your relationship has been to the masculine and feminine energies, right? The masculine and feminine style up until now, so that you can create a space for new ways of having your patients say yes to the treatment that we know that they deserve. So I'm going to read aloud a list of masculine qualities that you're probably all familiar with and you've heard. And then I'm going to read aloud a list of feminine qualities, or common assumptions of what is more masculine and what is feminine. And what's really important about this this particular exercise is just to make conscious, just to be aware of what your relationship is with these different styles, with these different words, what they have been. If you're taking notes, or if you have a journal, as you go through this, just jot down some thoughts that may be coming up as I'm saying these words. I mean, there's no right or wrong way to do this exercise. The only thing that matters is just to stay present and notice what your body is feeling, or what's thinking, or what's it thinking when I'm saying these particular type of assumptions. And again, if you're somewhere safe to do so, I invite you to just kind of take a deep breath, kind of wash away your morning so far, or mid-morning, depending on what coast you're at, right? So just kind of take a deep breath and just kind of pause. And when I put the list of The first is going to be masculine qualities on the screen. And just notice what may come up for you and where your attention goes. So some masculine commonly held assumptions and some words: external, mental, separate, structure, control, angular, hard, penetrating, doing, goal, driven, provider, ordered, contained, linear, focused task, non-changing, predictable, head, protective, analytical. So what happens in your body when you're connecting to these type of masculine qualities? If you're able to just kind of jot some thoughts down. Okay, take another deep breath. Kind of shake that off a little, move around your chair, or if you're standing, or if you're sitting, stand up. If you're standing, sit down. Just kind of change that energy a little bit, right? Because I'm going to read off more feminine qualities or more feminine assumptions. And then notice what's evoked and notice what you pay attention to with these list of words. Internal, emotional, related, flow, surrender, round, soft, receptive, being, intention, love-driven, nurturing, nester, chaotic, wild, imperfection, non-linear, multitasking, ever-changing, unpredictable, body, flexible, intuitive. Just write down some qualities that you may have evoked on a piece of paper. Or feel free to share it in the chat box what came up for you with either masculine list or either feminine list, right? So where'd your attention go? What did you feel that you may have resonated more with? That should have been a great poll question. Which one did you resonate more with, the masculine qualities or the feminine qualities? I learned something. Every time I give this, I'm going to write that down. Right? So when you look up the word leader, right, in the dictionary, it's a person who directs, a person who has a commanding authority. So when you're thinking about yourself as a leader in communication, right, as a leader in your financial arrangement conversations, as a leader in your treatment presentations, which did you kind of connect with? And then think about the culture of your practice even, because you can do this as a team exercise. You can definitely do this as a team exercise. So what's the culture of your practice? Where do you find that the communication style is more within your practice? Do you see different type of situations where you can be a little bit more masculine in one task and then step into the feminine in another? Right? Or can you look at perhaps you have someone in your practice and you're thinking, wow, they are just this one quality all the time, 24/7. They don't fluctuate at all, right? And it's not right or wrong. It's just starting to notice the various qualities, because really it comes down to what we can learn for our patients. So it's interesting just to notice that the way we think about communication and the way we think about being a leader and how it's defined in our own world and how it's defined in our own practices, most of the time that leader, that communicator, has been a very masculine term. And it's just the ocean that we're swimming in. It's like the water to a fish. We're just oriented a little bit more to those masculine qualities. And sometimes the feminine qualities were pushed aside. That's not as important. But again, going back to the research, they're showing that, oh yeah, we've been, from a female perspective, those qualities are being very much a contributing factor to, or the advantage when we're working with people, and ultimately the profitability of businesses and increasing their bottom line. So in the realm of case presentation, it's that compassion. It's that willingness to really draw someone towards you, to draw someone into your world that's going to make the difference of you increasing your case acceptance rates and the rates that we talked about. Because if you're just kind of pushing or trying to convince or quote unquote educate your patients to say yes to the treatment, especially in this day and age, people are sensitive to that. You're sensitive to that, right? You're sensitive to that type of energy. And they're just going to run the other direction, right? So one of the things that I really want you to know about me is that I didn't always think of communication this way. I didn't always think about case presentation this way. I actually, when I graduated dental hygiene school, I assumed, what you say when you assume, that people would just do what's right, right? I would just misspoke. I just can't diagnose. I would recommend their treatment and the best treatment possible. And I just assumed, a lot of you can probably relate, beginning in your careers, a little bit more naivete, thinking that patients were just going to say yes to what you talked about, right? And then you're trying to motivate people and they're saying no, and it just gets to be so frustrating. So when I started to look at things in a little bit different way, what I found that these skills you can learn. And I can assure you that all of the skills that for case presentation and increasing your ability to have that communication, whether you're looking at it for patients and case acceptance, or even if you're in a leadership position and you need to have a little bit more communication savvy with your colleagues or the doctor that you work with, or if you're a doctor in your team that you work with. So I want you to know that teaching this, the blueprint is actually grassroots, is what I teach when I work with my clients. So it's not some ivory tower, and it doesn't necessarily have any type of it's not applicable to the everyday office. In fact, I'm sitting in an office right now working with the client. So that's why I apologize if you hear some noise in the background. So I am in an office right now. So, and really from working with these dental practices over the years, what I have found is that the biggest thing that holds a lot of providers back and office managers back and team members back is the fear of, like you mentioned before, right? It's that fear of being salesy. You said it right now. 100% of you don't like that word. So it's not just a women thing. There's a lot of men out there too that don't want to feel salesy. And if you think back at that fear, I always thought it would be a fear of rejection that's holding us back. But it's really that fear of being perceived as this type of a salesperson. And the reason I tell you this is really to underscore one of the big reasons I believe that we're all in oral health care, right? That we're all here in the first place, because we want to give back. We want to give back through our services. So in order for us to be able to give back and to kind of start to shift things a little bit with our communication styles is, again, this is another, I want to highlight this, make a note of this. This is another team exercise that you can bring to your offices, is let's kind of work through what our belief systems are, right? Let's work through the BS, right, of what's happening. And we have to really have a chance to first find out where we're coming from, right, from a practitioner and a provider standpoint, before we start pointing the finger and saying, oh, they're never going to accept treatment, right? Why am I even bothering? Because I know he's going to turn down that FMX. He has in the past, he's going to do it again, right? So when we stop ourselves, even from stepping into that conversation, this is an interesting exercise that you can look at. List your beliefs about your responsibilities to your patients in regard to. And I just threw some stuff out there that I've been working with practices on. You can add whatever specifically to you and your location and your practice and what's coming up for you. So implants I put on there, power brushes, third-party payers, anything with money and numbers. There's always type of resistance. I feel a lot of resistance with production and tracking that production, informing all of your patients of their health condition and offering all the options of their treatment. So this is just an exercise that you can have some flip charts and just really kind of peeling back the layers to what your team and what yourself feels about the various things that are going on or the treatments that you're offering, even before you even enter into that type of conversation. Because that way, when I'm talking a little bit about the money personalities or money styles, right? So I don't know if you and how many of you know Gary Tackett. I probably pronounced his last name wrong, but Gary gave me permission to use this quote because I was sitting in one of his continuing education programs probably 15 years ago now. And when he started saying that there was a direct correlation between a team's comfort zones in talking about money to their own personal finance, I found that they are comfortable presenting the equivalent to their average checking account balance. If their balance averages $100 a month, then sealants, composites, and smaller general dentistry is easier to discuss than larger cases of, say, over $5,000, right? And so when I saw that, and that's just been, oh my gosh, that's so true, because I can relate to that as myself. So if I'm feeling it, I'm assuming that others have, and it's been confirmed over the past 10 years as I've been doing this type of work. So understanding someone's belief, and I share this with you as far as with what is our belief around money? What is our belief about how our patients pay for things? What's our belief? Do we have an insurance mindset? Understanding all that before we even enter into those conversations is going to make a big difference. And then again, drawing from outside of dentistry, because I really love to do that, is that Seth Godin, some of you may have heard of him. Just Google him if you haven't. But he even talks about it. Yes, there's money, but before there's money, there's a story. It turns out that once you change the story, the money changes too, right? So once you change your story, your case acceptance rate can change too. Because what we do know about patients is that people make decisions based on their emotions. And then they follow it up with logic, right? And I say people / patients, clients, and oh yeah, us, right? We're people too. So we make decisions, and decisions that we can make is whether or not I'm going to pick up the phone to actually call that patient on that treatment list that I just printed out. Whether or not I'm actually going to bring up that crown that the doctor diagnosed 3 weeks ago. Whether or not I'm going to do this, right? So we still make those decisions from an emotional standpoint and from our belief standpoint. So looking at that way. And so what I kind of have put together, and feel free to borrow these if you want to, or create your own. But as I've been doing this type of work, from a negative belief system about what we do, to more of a positive, being happy in our operatory and serving our clients at the highest level, these are just some other beliefs that perhaps you may want to adopt or bring back to your practices to adopt or tweak, right? Patients want, so I have the belief that patients want and can afford high quality dentistry. That learning new communication skills will support better health for my patients. It's rarely about money. It's always about motivate and concern. Patients deserve the very best that I have to offer. I stand in the value I offer as a professional. The past does not equal the future. So 6 months ago, Mrs. Jones came in. Mrs. Jones is a different person, and I'm a different provider when she comes in today, right? There is no such thing as failure, only results. Production is only a measure of how much service and care we provide. So all those are kind of with the mindset shift of what we need, because oftentimes, again, from our standpoint and from a leadership standpoint, for your clients, for my clients, for my patients to show up differently, I need to show up differently as their provider or their hygienist or their office manager, their dental assistant. So with that, it's kind of moving into, mentioned a lot about the energy around the feminine, the collaboration, and taking the time to draw that patient towards you. Now I'm going to do some props, and some kudos for the linear aspect or the masculine model of case acceptance, and that linear aspect of it, which is the logical, and that's the expert, right? And so if you're taking notes, please write down the word expert guide, G-U-I-D-E, right? So you are an expert. You need to be able to step into that communication style And this is really, again, about positioning yourself. I wish it was something different. I really do. But as soon as you walk in that door of your practice, as soon as you sit behind that desk, as soon as you sit chair side, you are the expert, right? Your patients look at you like you're the expert. And so if you're not stepping into that at the level that you should, then patients are going to be picking that up. And when you're going through that type of conversation and all of a sudden you're either making yourself small or you're feeling quote unquote sorry for the patient, or you're making assumptions that they can't afford it or they're going to say no, and you're not really showing up with your shoulders back as that expert, that is going to affect your ability to have that patient know that you're making a stand for them. Know that you really believe in what you are, and I'm going to use the word, selling. Right? So if you think about, I don't know if the percentage of male and females, but I'm a female and I get my hair done. So I love my hairstylist. I have referred probably 7 to 12 clients to her. And what am I doing? I'm selling her services because I believe in them. Right? So that's the type of energy that we need to have when we're having our case presentation conversations, when we're doing our reactivation calls. And I'm just going to make that broad assumption that we all do believe in the treatment and the services that our current providers are providing, because that's a whole other webinar if you're not. And so one of the things that you need to really look at is just about the languaging that we use. Right? And are we using powerful languaging? Can we say that word power and we'd be okay with it? Right? So can we even step into that and say, you know what, I want to use very specific languaging. Some of you may be familiar with this type of vocabulary. However, I will challenge you and say, yes, you may know it. However, are you utilizing it every single day? Because we can look back at your case acceptance, right? And are you tracking? Are you tracking on what patients or case acceptance rate that you actually are stepping in and using this languaging versus when you're not, right? So there's a lot of different type of statistics that we can run to support the value of changing our communication styles and changing our languaging. So inflammation to infection or bleeding, and what I'll do now, just in the respect of time, I'll just send this out to you so you can go ahead and take a look at it from yourself. And so I have another slide of it too. Transformational language when you're making the appointment, right? Has to come back. How many times have you heard that? Has to come back or gets to come back, right? So there's certain nuances to your languaging that you can pay attention to. And you can set up games even within the office so you can start to practice. So number one would be stepping into that expert and that masculine side would be knowing a little bit more about the languaging that you're using. So you can get that type of, the patients are going to say yes if they know that you believe in them, right? So in the next part, what we're looking at is I talked to you about the 4 steps that I want to go into a little bit deeper. So the 4 steps as far as really to kind of leaning in and closing that gap between you and your patients is connection. Now, some of you probably have heard this, but I repeat it to myself every single time I'm practicing and every single time I go into a practice. Patients actually don't care how much you know unless they know how much you care, right? Isn't that the truth? So let me say that again if you haven't heard that before. Patients actually don't care how much you know unless they know how much you care. So when you can find that point of connection in your patient acceptance conversation, it's more important than anything else that you could say. So I'm not encouraging, and you won't see scripts or formulaic this, or you have to say it this way. I'm from the Northeast. That wouldn't work because I like to add R's to words that don't have R's in them, and I like to not pronounce R's. So you speaking my style of communication, it's not going to work for you, right? So you have to kind of step into your own leadership and stepping into your own style. So I don't want anyone to have an over or worry about having to do a formula or putting templates to your languaging, so to speak. So it's getting that general thought process of the GROW model. And GROW means identifying what the patient's goals are, what the reality is, what options that they have, and the wrap up, which would be setting up the appointment. So it's not necessarily a script, it's just a general. And yes, this basically does come from a coaching background, and it's very successful when you step into it from a case acceptance and a case presentation conversation. So it's goals, reality, options, and wrap up. Now, what you may be familiar with is something that's called open-ended questions. And those open-ended questions are answered, it can't be answered with a yes or a no. Now, I do want to pause you and say, hey, if you've heard about open-ended questions before, awesome. Are you using them every day, right? Are you listening to yourself asking a closed-ended question and then challenging yourself, you know what? I'm going to write that one down and flip it to make an open-ended, because that's what leaders and that's what communication specialists do when we work on our languaging. So the open-ended questions start to talk about what the goals are, because it reveals the motivators and concerns of our patient. And that usually begins with the what, the how, or tell me a little bit more. So series of questions, open-ended questions that I have, and I can certainly send to you. What do you like about your smile? How is this affecting your life? That's a real power question when you get that experience, as far as really getting that connection and asking the patient these open-ended questions. So what I want to also, these are like, these two questions are for the advanced. So if you're really kind of feeling sassy and you want to try these this afternoon when you're talking about patients and wanting to really start that connection, is that you want to invite others to tell their story. And the two that work most successfully for me and for my clients is, how has this condition affected your life? And what would it mean to you when we are able to take care of this? Not if we can take care of this, when we are able to take care of this, right? So that's the languaging. And it came home to me back in the 90s when I was working with a patient cleaning her teeth. Gosh, she was so sweet. Every 3 months. Sensitivity, lower quad, class 5 cervical margins, no decay, but it was just sensitive. And so me and my left brain masculine thought process was just telling her what she needed to do, right? You need to do this, we can do this, we can do this, and do this. And so when I first started getting introduced to this, then I said, oh, this is not going to work. This is stupid. Honestly, I was the most resistant learner ever. I don't know, show of hands, or has anyone resistant on this phone? I was the most resistant. I was challenged every consultant I ever met. But I tried it. I said, okay, I'm going to work with her. So I said to Mrs. Jones, so your sensitivity, we've been talking about that for, a good year now. How has the sensitivity affected your life? What's happening with your sensitivity when you leave here? And then I had to pause, right? P-A-U-S-E, which is I had to be quiet, which is very hard for me. So I had to pause, give her at least 30 seconds to 45 seconds. And that's another little quiz. If you're someone who always listens to the radio and likes a lot of sound, time, how long actually 30 seconds is being quiet, because that's how long your person that you're speaking with, your patient, they need that time to process what you just said a lot of times if they're going to make a big decision. So embracing the pause is huge. So I allowed myself to pause, and she comes back with this sweet story that her and her husband like to walk down the street or around the corner to an ice cream store, and they like to get ice cream. And because of her sensitivity, she hadn't been able to do that since about the 9 months mark, or since I started cleaning her teeth. So I said to you, and then I followed up with, oh my gosh, this is getting good. What would it mean to you if we were able to, and I think I said Joe because the doctor I was working for, what would it mean if Dr. Joe was able to fix that for you or take care of that for you? And she's like, you could do that? She just looked at me like, oh my gosh, like her whole world would change. Now, did the treatment change? No. Did we actually do the exact same thing that I've been trying to tell her to do all this time? Absolutely. But it's just how I positioned it. So it really makes a difference on that type of connection. And so as we're going into learning about the open-ended questions, identifying what their motivators and concerns are, then when you're doing the wrap-up, when you're doing the scheduling, you don't want to forget about it. You want to tie what they want and what they want, their goals or their concerns, into the procedure or the treatment or the service that you're offering, right? So you're tying that benefit, and then the patient is more likely to say yes because they can see themselves in that particular type of story. So again, not necessarily scripting, but sentence stems. So you can begin with, so that you, Mrs. Jones, so that you can make sure you can have ice cream with your hubby, let me have Dr. Joe come in and talk to you about those lower teeth or that sensitivity, so we can find out, what he can do to help take care of that. So it's just a little bit of languaging in order to make sure you can have that ice cream with your husband. This is what we're going to do, right? So the benefit plus the procedure, and then she's more likely to say yes because she sees herself growing. I'm not trying to fix her. I'm not trying to tell her. I'm pulling her into the conversation of what she wants. And so a lot of you may be thinking, this sounds really too basic, right? This is no-brainer stuff. I don't really need to be learning this. So I throw that out to you, right? Because I have been doing this for a little while. And again, based on the case acceptance rate, there's a little bit room for growth for yourselves, right? So it's what you think that you already know that may be preventing you from learning something different. And it's that case acceptance rate, the no-show and cancellation rate, it's the rescheduling of hygiene appointments, it's scheduling up that follow-up. So all these type of communication skills and styles plays into pretty much everything that we do in the course of the day. So again, underneath that GROW model, GROW, there's subsets and trainings underneath that as well. So you can definitely learn more about it if this is something that you're interested in. And of course, I reference the slides because it is all evidence-based. So it's very important as far as from my perspective when I'm working with teams that they know it's coming from a solid background. And as you can kind of get an idea that you want to open up the inner and outer, right? It's the mindset, but in the structure, right? So it's the feminine qualities as well as the masculine qualities. And so that's what the balance is that we can bring a little bit more to our patients. So that connection versus lecturing. Now, as we're finishing up, and I did promise that I would go ahead and share with you, is that addressing that I can't afford it. So what I really want to say that, it's the answer to that. And there's usually a couple of reasons why people, patients, even ourselves, right, when we tell someone we can't afford it, right, so we can put ourselves in this type of situation. Patients will tell you why you can't afford it, and it's really about the value that they perceive in the services that we're providing. It's the value that they perceive of themselves and their oral health. So the question that I love to ask when they say they can't afford it, and it's very effective. But before I give that question to you, because I know you're sitting on the edge of your seat, probably because your next patient is going to be coming, I just want to take a step back and make sure that you realize that you need to have done a really good job of building the value of your services prior to, and really helping that patient fill the gap between what their goals are, what their motivators are, what their concerns are, and the reality of what's happening in their mouth, and then what you can do for them. So if you have been able to do all that and put that package together, then that question would be, what if you had the money? Would this be a yes for you? Okay? And that's a little bit different thing than we can throw options at you, right? Or they start to say, well, I don't really think I can afford it. Well, we have this service, or we have this service, or we have this service. You can get to that, right? It's just like my story about the ice cream. You can get to all your wonderful systems, your procedures, your partners, everything that you want to offer your patients, but they're not there yet, right? They're not ready to have you solve their problem. They're still in the muck. They're still deciding. So getting them very clear on if you did have the money, if your insurance did cover it, if you could get the time off work, right? Is this a fit for you? Is this type of treatment, is what the doctor recommended, will work for you? And that's when you're going to be able to peel back additional objections. Or they're going to say, yeah, it's perfect. And then you can move forward with all your solutions. You have that confirmation there before you move on. And then if they say, no, I'm not really sure, and it is a money thing, don't be afraid to kind of work around with this last question is, what would you need to get out of it? What would you need to have happen with your smile? What would you need to have happen with that, that tooth that's, oozing out of the back, of the back of your mouth? That's sarcasm. But what would you need to get out of it to make it worth your time or your investment in order for you to take time off work, right? Get them back into their reality of whether is it painful, whatever their motivators would be. And don't be afraid to bring them back to those open-ended questions again and that active listening again. Because a lot of times they're almost there, but we shut them down. Right? So it's really make sure that we are taking the time to kind of learn what we need to learn and staying in that, I call it a dance of objections, right? Staying in that ickiness with them a little bit longer so we can answer those questions and we can solve their problems. And I will challenge you too that taking a leadership stand, right? Taking that communication stand is really also about making sure that we're not making our needs to be liked bigger than our commitment or our stand to our patients, right? And that's just an interesting. I'm going to throw that out there as far as with this whole type of conversation. Yes, we want to be liked, but we also want to go back to being that expert guide. Okay, does that make sense? So it's a little bit busting some of you and stepping on some toes a little bit, but it's really that likeness factor is important, but we have to see where we are balancing that in that harmony, right? Does that make sense? So again, going back into those questions about the difficult conversations or the money conversation, finding out what exactly emotion that they're dealing with, and then you can go into the asking them about, exactly what we can do to help solve them. And just a quick answer, just to kind of clarify what exactly I mean by staying in the dance with them. We often hear that the patient may say, oh, I hate needles. And so what would be the wonderful dental assistant would say, you know what, doctor is so awesome about giving an injection. We have this anesthesia that doesn't hurt. He just wiggles your lip. He does blah, 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 blah. And we go all into solutions of what we think the patient wants to hear versus following up with an open-ended question or lead-in, right, an active listening stance. Oh, so what exactly is it about the needle that you don't like? And this has happened. The patient says, well, it's not really the needle. It's that I have a job interview in about 2 hours and I really want to know if my lip is numb. Or it's going to be numb, or it's going to be fat, or I'm going to be droopy. See that distinction? So answering that question and going down that rabbit hole is completely different than going down a rabbit hole the patient doesn't even care about. So think about that as well in your financial conversations where we actually may be leading the witness when they may not even have that particular objection. So I appreciate everyone's time. It's just, I can, as you can tell, I can geek out on all this, and I just love being able to help people, and hopefully I've given you a little taste of some possibilities to increase your case acceptance. There's nothing better than the reality of working with a mentor. So you're such in good hands with Dana as your mentor and working through this group and this community. And if you're like me and you kind of have like some of these crazy ideas, there's tons of passion, I will send you, hopefully you've taken some notes, and I'll send you the follow-up slides if that would be. You can just send me an email and I can go ahead and send those to you as well. And I hope you guys have an incredible day, and I really was an honor to be here. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much.
Thank you, Christine. Oh my gosh, we really appreciate such great information. I had some really good takeaways from this. I loved the dental leadership vocabulary, where you're kind of just changing the way you verbalize things just a little bit makes such a big difference in the way patients perceive like what you're saying. That was probably my biggest takeaway.
Yay, it's true. Now, and the best way to put that into action is to pick one and work with that for 2 weeks. Just try to interject, and not try to do all of it. And that's why I find with teams, we get all excited, we get this shiny object syndrome, and we gotta do everything. No, just pick one word and have it and just practice with that. And then it's going to get very normal for you, almost like driving home. Most of us can drive home with our eyes closed, right? And then you pick another word, and then slowly you'll start to find that your language and your vocabulary changes. It's really awesome.
That's a great action plan that everybody can start doing right away, is just pick one, like, make it, bite it off into smaller pieces for sure. So question, so once you identify kind of what your communication style is, whether it's masculine or feminine, then do you have to tweak it depending on who you're communicating with? Does that make sense?
Yes. So I'm going to say yes and no. You know me, I can't say definitively one or the other. So that's you can't. Obviously, life is fluid, right? And everything is kind of like in a spiral. So if you're looking at from a situational leadership perspective, obviously, if I am, and a lot of you may be familiar with the DISC personality style. Are you familiar with the DISC?
Yes, yeah, and I think that's kind of where the question came about, was personality styles. If do you kind of have to tweak the way you communicate with somebody do you have to kind of identify what their communication style is as well to get the most bang for your buck?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. So personality styles is one aspect of it, but this is coming from a perspective of you don't necessarily, you can mirror languaging. So you can mirror, if you have someone who's really type A, I'm going to use that because most people know type A, right? So the ones that stand in the waiting room all the time, who speak really fast, right? Who want to get it done yesterday. So yes, you can step up your languaging and your vocal tonality for that particular person, but you don't necessarily want to give up on who you are from that feminine energies as far as connection. Because once you get beyond all that, they make their decisions on emotions just like everyone else. And if we assume that they don't, or we just forget that they don't, then we're missing a little piece of that puzzle, because we're all humans, right? We all bleed the same way. So yes, you want to be a little bit of a chameleon in that type of approach, but don't forget the fact that you're still the expert. And early in my career, type A personality and directives in the DISC personality scared the heck out of me. So I just cowered. I wouldn't bring this up. Oh, so sorry, you need an FMX. Oh, this is terrible. And I would feel bad. So it's just kind of but stepping into that, your own expert, and kind of meeting them at that energy versus being one up. It's more about being on the same plane. If I answered that question.
Yeah, thank you. Definitely. And then, and then I loved hearing again, patients don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So thank you for reminding us all of that. That's always a powerful statement for sure.
I love that. Yep, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank everybody for being online today. We did record this, so you will be getting the link to this recording in your inbox within the next 24 hours. And then any kind of slides or tip sheets that Christine wants to share with everybody, that will be also included. And then Christine will follow up with everybody kind of on her own to make sure that if there's any questions that didn't get answered during the webinar, she can reach out to people directly. So the link will be available here shortly. The CE code will also be available in your email. So with that, I would say thank you for everybody for being online. Thank you to Christine, our special guest industry expert for today. And we will see you next week on our next live event.